Okay, welcome back to the Crazy Courage podcast. We're here to interview another business owner. We have here with us today Caleb Dodds from Dods Technology Consulting. And from what I understand, Caleb was telling me this is a fairly new venture. But why don't I turn it over to Caleb? You can tell me all about it.
Perfect. I'm not sure exactly what we should start with, but Dods Technology Consulting is only about 5 or 6 months old at this point.
Nice.
Um,
Brand new.
Basically looking to help non-technical companies with their technology. So focused on companies that tend to be physical good type companies, construction, manufacturing, logistics. They tend to be really good at their business, but not so much on often missing expertise in the technology side.
Okay. So can you give me an example of what kind of technology we're talking about? Because technology is a very broad term, right? So like what does that mean?
It is fairly broad. I'm focused on what would be called operations and back office. So back office being the all of the accounting and HR and those kinds of systems, and then the operations are more the direct in manufacturing. That's the systems that run your manufacturing or track your manufacturing. The logistics company that's tracking packages. The construction company that's tracking often vehicles. Or those kinds of things. So it's integrating those pieces together is where I can sit.
Okay. So now is it fair to say that you mainly focus on companies that, like you said, have physical operations, physical goods, but you help them with their software integration?
I would say software integration, but often extends into hardware. What makes a lot of those companies interesting is they tend to have non-standard hardware. It's not typical IT hardware, and it tends to be often old or limited in power and so on, which is what's sort of unique about them often compared to just your office technology environment.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I love it. All right, well, that's great. Now, is it just you at this point? Are you the only?
It's just me. I'm hoping to keep it that way from an employee point of view. We work with partners and contractors as needed to handle the business, but right now I'm hoping to just keep it as a solo business.
Nice. So that's fun, but you got to wear a lot of hats when you do that, right?
For sure. That's been part of the learning process.
All right, awesome. And I hope that you're able to put in a lot of integrate a lot of software and hardware into your own business at the same time. Okay, so
I get to learn on my own software to run my own business.
Right. It's always it's a steep learning curve for sure. Now let's talk about how you got to this point, right? So you got this brand new company. It's got the new business smell still, right? It's fantastic, still shiny, but you have a lot of experience working for large corporations, though, right?
Yeah, I've spent most of my career in fairly large corporations, well, I'm pretty well known, the Bell Canadas and Nortels and so on of the world. So I have, when I look back after, roughly 30 years of working at just, going to a job, so to speak, I realized that I ended up in the same place in almost every company in one way or another. It didn't matter what my job description was. And I ended up sitting between the business side of the world and the technology side. So I seem to have an ability to sort of work in both those spaces, which is a little bit unusual.
Nice.
And I realized as I was starting to think of where to go next, that the challenges that I was helping a lot of these companies solve probably existed in pretty much every company. And so I saw that as an opportunity to do something I always wanted to do, which was go to my own and but still help other companies with the things I enjoy doing, honestly, which is sort of solving the problems that sit in that mixed space between the two sides of it.
Oh, nice. So listen, can I ask you? I know like we're in Ottawa, so in Ottawa area, Nortel. I gotta ask you, how was your experience there?
You know what? That was my first job. So I
Okay.
really can't complain. I came out of school and landed a great job at Nortel. I was
Nice.
there for about 7 years before the layoffs in the 2000 hit.
Okay.
And I was part of that experience of losing my job very early on, which probably has affected me in some ways when I look at work the whole way through. But it was a great place to work. I mean, at the time.
Yeah.
But one thing I did discover is I get bored doing the same thing for a long period of time. And
All
even
right.
after 6 or 7 years there, pretty interesting work, I was starting to say, it's time to pick something new.
So it sort of worked out. Is
It
that?
sort of worked out, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
And I was
Nice. That's
very
good. So,
fortunate. I landed another job pretty quick.
so how does that feel? Having and sorry, you're lucky to have another job almost right away. Is that
Almost right away, yeah. So I was
okay?
very
Good.
fortunate.
Because that's pretty crazy. I mean, I haven't had that layoff sort of situation myself, but I can imagine it'd be pretty stressful to have the rug yanked out from under you. I would think.
For sure, yeah. And had a young family at the time, and it was,
Wow.
yeah, it was kind of scary. I guess I didn't really have time to get too scared because I had a friend who happened to have you're looking for someone who was with my skill set. So even if I landed that job, it only lasted for a year because they were supplying Nortel and other similar companies. So
Oh,
it
okay.
was later, but it didn't keep me going.
Wow, nice, nice. Now, do you want to talk about the experiences at other corporations that you were at? How did those
I
go?
mean,
Good,
probably
bad?
probably the more interesting one to talk about is Deloitte, which
Deloitte?
was
Okay.
quite different. Everyone assumes I'm an accountant when I mention I
Yeah,
work
I'll
at
bet.
Deloitte,
I'll bet. Yeah.
but I was there as an engineer, essentially consulting into companies, helping them with a tax credit that requires an engineering write-up. So I was
Okay.
essentially going into from startup to some of Canada's biggest technology companies and helping them figure out how to claim and defend their tax claims. And it was very interesting. I went there specifically to learn more about business. I did that. I got insight into a lot of companies from seeing how they operate.
Nice.
And it also gave me a level of the consulting of going out and just sort of learning on the fly as you go into a company and understand what they do and
Yeah, yeah.
figuring out how to help them. So
And playing
that's
in their sandbox kind of thing, right?
very much so, yeah. And there's no way you can understand everything about everything. So you go
No,
in always a bit cold and
sure.
you learn as you go.
All right, awesome, awesome. So, what was the last job you had before this? Before your
I was at a company called Canadian Banknote. Pretty
okay,
interesting company, actually. We print all of Canada's money and money for companies around the world.
nice.
Passports, driver's licenses, what they call secure documents. Fascinating from a technology point of view. And I was there. I was the senior director of the IT and data for manufacturing. So I did look after the
Okay.
normal day-to-day IT, but I was looking after all of their systems and software and hardware that related to their manufacturing.
Nice. Okay, so let's surely you needed some sort of crazy security clearance to work there.
We did. We have to have well, it's not the one that you have if you want to be CSIS, but sort of one below that.
Not
So
far
yeah,
away.
everyone has to have a security clearance. And no, we
Yeah,
can't take samples and any of that
right,
stuff.
right. Yeah, I'll bet. I'll bet. Now, can you so do you still need that security clearance for what you're doing now?
It's something in some companies I might need it. I haven't actually encountered that yet. The
Okay.
way security clearances work, you sort of lose it. It's attached to a company.
Oh,
So
okay.
I would have to have a reason for getting it again, but could easily get that because I had it already in that environment.
Interesting. Interesting. And to be fair, I've never had to do a security clearance check. Knows hopefully I'd pass. You never know. I find out some skeletons in closet. No idea. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I didn't realize that it would follow you from a company. I thought sort of it would be something that you kind of achieve as sort of a certification, I guess. But that's not the case, right? It's not. It's not portable.
No, I think they keep the results, so it's an easier process when you go back, but it is attached to the. I guess you need a reason for it, and that's attached to the company.
All right. Well, good to know. If I ever need security clearance, I'll know. I'll have a little more insight.
Cool.
So you're at Canadian Bank now. Now, is it a same thing as everywhere else? Like you got a little bit bored and you're like, ah, you know what? I just need to cut loose, do my own thing.
Yeah, it was. I think that's a lot of it. I was starting to get tired of what I was doing, um, which, as I say, has been sort of a pattern for me after a number of, 7 to 10 years at a company. I started to look around.
Right.
I'd always had in the back of my mind that I want to start my own company. I put it off. I had a family, didn't think it was fair to them to jump out and have them take the risk of me starting a
Right.
company. But at this
Yeah.
point in my
Time is
life,
tough.
my kids are, most that my youngest will be leaving this year for school. So it was
Wow.
an opportunity to kind of do that. When I was looking around, honestly, I looked around at other jobs and I just could not get excited. There was lots out there that I probably could have moved to, but I just found myself thinking, it's just going to be another job with all of the, well, I mean, the upsides of working for a large company, but the downsides as
Yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
I think it's time to try this out on my own now. So.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So just timing seemed right. Decided to take the plunge. I mean, that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
that's really what it was. My wife and I always chatted that once kids were gone, there wasn't really a reason to be tied down to, 9 to 5, you know, work all the time. We want to have some
Yeah.
flexibility. So this was kind of that opportunity. I did have, as I was looking around and starting to talk to people, I had a good opportunity come up as a first client. So that sort of drove well, I might as well do it now if I'm going to go because I have an opportunity to not starve while I'm getting the business going. So that was,
That's so that opportunity, did that come up while you were still working for the other company?
yeah, I was starting to look around and figure out what it would look like and how to make
Okay.
the leap.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of
Yeah.
networking to just understand whether the services I was thinking of offering had value in the market, and a lot of the research you need to do before you take the leap typically. And happened to hit on an opportunity with a friend actually that
Okay.
was a pretty good one. So that was sort of the incentive to go at that point in time, I guess.
Nice. It's all about who you know, I guess, right? Have a
Pretty
good
much.
network. Well, that's great. I mean, that's great that you're able to the stars aligned, I guess, the timing of what's going on in your family, and then the friend that had the opportunity. It sounds like it was meant to be. So that's great. Now, did it work out for you, this client?
It's worked well. It's ongoing.
Okay.
It's been I think your first client is always a learning experience, and it
Oh, for
certainly
sure. For
has
sure.
been a learning experience for me. Lots
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
people would probably do differently the next time, but yeah,
Of
certainly it's
course.
ongoing and it's working well. So I
That's
can't
all the
complain.
fun stuff of, now I got to invoice, I got to figure out bank accounts and doing, it's
Yeah,
all that fun stuff, right? And taxes and yeah. That's a good time. Now, do you only have the one client at the moment?
I have a couple at this
You
point,
have a couple, okay.
so a couple that are keeping me busy, but now in the process of really trying to figure out how I get the next one.
Right. Okay. So the first ones may have come a little bit easier. Now we got to get you out there to maybe find another couple opportunities.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's been one of the, I think, learnings has been that finding those next ones are more challenging than I thought they might be. But
Okay. And
still,
and, and
an
you look,
ongoing
and
process.
usually, I mean, you're doing well because usually the first one's the hard one, right? To,
Yeah,
to to actually have someone take a chance on you the first time around, that's difficult. Now, at least, if you're trying to find other clients, well, no problem. I've already got a couple these experiences under my belt. I can, it's much smoother and you can sell it a lot better. So it's just a matter of connecting with the right people, I guess, at this point.
yeah. I think it's in some ways it's an exercise of numbers of just getting in front of enough people and
Right.
learning at the same time how to sell, which is something I think
Now,
is
is
an
that new for
ongoing.
you, learning how to sell?
It is. I've done some marketing and sales in the past, but always in
Okay.
the context of, having people around me to help me out with that. So,
Fair.
sort of a
Fair.
part of a company. So this is now I'm on my own. So yeah, it's been a learning experience for sure.
Right. Another one of those hats you have to wear, the marketing and sales, right? That, those are also a steep learning curve, right? You know,
For sure. Yeah.
yeah, no one like there's no one can teach you that because you can talk about sales and marketing as much as you want, but it it's very specific to your business as well, right? I can't sell toasters the same way as I'm selling consulting services, right? So it's
Yeah, I agree. It's specific to the business, and I think it's specific in many ways to your personality and so on too.
sure,
What would work for some people or for me, and vice versa.
of course, right? And when you want to market yourself to the clients that you want based on how you like to work and do things. And I think that's kind of a challenge too for a lot of people starting out. That's usually a challenge because those first couple clients that you get, not for you because it sounds like you've had some great opportunities, but for most people, finding those first clients is the challenge. And you find those clients, and it turns out they might not be the best clients because you were just maybe a little bit anxious or desperate to get those first clients, just to be able to work, just to be able to make it happen. And then it turns out those clients maybe weren't the best fit, but then you do find out what would be a good fit. And so after a handful of clients and going through some growing pains, that's when you figure it out. But it sounds like you've already sort of figured that out already, and maybe that from your past experiences, the kind of companies that you want to work with.
Yeah, I think I had a good idea going into who I wanted to work with. Figuring out how to sell the value has probably been my bigger
challenge, for
challenge,
sure.
and I'm still ongoing trying to sort that out. I know I know it's there from conversations, but how you sell that to or build the trust and get into company in front of companies.
Absolutely, it's the trust, right? For someone to take a chance on you, for someone doesn't know you, it's the trust. That I think that's you hit it right on the head. And that's what's tough to get out there. It's tough to get that in a sales pitch, right? Like, how do you pitch someone so that they can get you to trust you, let their guard down, and be like, oh, this person actually does have some value. They're not just, here to sell me something I don't need, or trying to rip me off somehow, or, I mean, how many cold calls do I get on my cell phone? People telling me that, I've won a prize, or my Amazon package is stuck somewhere. For someone to pick up a phone call that for someone they don't recognize, you know what I mean, is that's a big hurdle to overcome.
For sure.
So let's talk about your consulting. So now, do you operate virtually? Do you is it businesses that you go in physical, in person?
Because of the physical nature of the business, I think a lot of the time there has to be some in person. I can do a lot of it virtually, but it's hard to understand a business, how they work from purely virtually. You need to get in there and kind of see it. Once you sort of have that basic understanding, you can kind of back off and do a lot.
Certainly, if it's a physical business, right, that creates physical products, like you've got to see the floor plan, the layout, how all the pieces work.
That's it, just to wrap your mind around the rest of the conversation. So once you sort of have that in mind, you can go from there.
Right. And now, are you targeting larger corporations? Like, how big of a business are we talking about, what's your ideal client, I guess? Where's that sweet spot?
The ideal client is someone is a medium. I'd call them a medium-sized business. Typically, a client that's going through a level of change. So the big ones, they've got other competition. My competition is some of the other real big consulting companies, and they're focused on the real big companies. So there's no point in me fighting that. And as well, I probably and service a very large corporation by myself. Right. So I'm sort of staying away from those. But there's a set of companies that aren't big enough to sort of have. It's often a CIO, a chief information officer, or a chief technology officer. They're too small for that. They sort of. I jokingly say they started off, and some guy said, "Yeah, I know Excel," and they said, "Okay, you're IT." And you kind of stuck there as the company grows. And it gets to a point, right, where they're saying, great job, but we need someone with a bit more, we've got some bigger questions we need to answer.
For sure.
And that's where I sort of fit, is whatever that, and it may be bigger than that, they may have a team, but they're sort of hitting the limits to what they can do internally, but they don't necessarily need to hire someone as a full-time, high-level person in the company to answer these questions. It's more of we just in a situation we need it. So often that's a growth spurt, or company gets bought, or changing from going from a parent to a child who's looking at, growing a business, making changes. Those are often what we drive. someone
Okay.
to look at this. It can just be company looking at it and saying, "Hey, we're falling behind from a technology point of view. We want to take a look, see what's going next."
But do you think and I'm not just the opportunities you're working on, but the businesses that you've worked with in the past in similar capacity, really the catalyst is something, or the opportunity opens up for your services is where there's some sort of change more often than not. Is that fair?
Yeah, that would probably be the biggest driver. Companies get comfortable, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
and
No, that's fair.
they're not out looking to make a leap in technology often when they're in that comfortable zone. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah, I
probably
get
good
you.
reason they should, but the
No question.
reality is it's usually when you have some change of management or some problem that starts to drive someone to say, okay, we need to take a look at this, and that's where
Right.
I see the biggest opportunities to actually get
I
different
mean, look,
things.
I hate to bring it up all the time, but like look at COVID, for instance, right? I think that really brought to the forefront the need for a lot of companies that had no kind of online presence to really beef up their technology. And I know that's not necessarily the kind of thing that you do, but just to point out that if you sit back and do the same thing forever, you're just falling behind, and you really do need to update your technology to keep up with just the changing trends,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I mean, it's a part of it. It is even just that those changes, though. We're seeing the big. You know, I was talking about you're starting to see it where the workforce is aging out to some extent,
Right?
and so you've got a lot of experience that leaves that's
Yes.
goes in people's heads, and you also just don't have the same number of people coming in. So to do the same work, you have to look at that same amount done. You have to look at how you sort of become more productive, and often
Right. Right.
that's what can drive this as well too. Is how do we do more with less, and how do we encode some of what that person spent 40 years learning, so that we don't
That's
need
the
the guy
worst.
with 40 years experience to actually do it. We can.
Oh, that drain of the experience is terrible right now. I think it's in almost every industry we're seeing it. You're right. I think that's a big thing. And yeah, these people leave, and they just automatically knew how to do all these things. And now some people are coming up that only have maybe a few years of experience, and they're like, I don't know how to do this stuff. Give me some software.
Yeah.
Help me out. Now,
Yeah.
do you deal with AI at all? Is that a thing in your
Everyone is
vocabulary?
asking the question, and I
Yeah.
wish I had
Well,
the perfect answer for it. I'm still, there's certainly AI. I would not, call myself an AI doter or anything. There's huge opportunity for AI. Um, Big businesses can dump the money to really take
sure.
advantage of it at this point.
Yeah.
Because AI is essentially a statistical guess at the best answer, though, you've got to be pretty careful how you use it in a lot of situations. And I still think
Sure.
there's a little ways to go before you can put it into a lot of the companies that I'm working with in a way
Okay.
that's useful. You definitely have to have a human in the loop
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
And the question is whether it provides enough value yet for that human to sort of, whether it's more work for them to handle all the problems than value it's giving. And I think that there's some areas, we all use it, asking questions, you can
Sure.
generate quick little
Sure.
code, look at your Excel spreadsheet. I think there's huge value in a lot of those small things, but actually having as a core part of the business yet in these sort of small to medium sized companies, I think is still, people are still figuring that out. I
For
don't
sure.
think that's
Yeah,
figured
and
it out.
I mean, I think it makes sense for what you're saying based on the businesses that you work in. Like it'd be very challenging to integrate any kind of AI into medium-sized corporation. Like unless you're building out your own custom AI, I don't see how it could be done. But now, okay, in your day-to-day, as you're doing the work, do you use AI yourself?
I do use it some. Where I found it actually the most useful is I tend to work across, when I'm actually doing implementation, a whole bunch of different computer languages.
Okay.
I have a background in software. I can handle it all, but I can never remember the exact syntax or what the call out is for this particular case. So it's
Okay.
extremely handy there. It's very productive. I can ask it a question. It will give me something that's 98% correct.
And then
Most
you
of the
can
time
just
that I can
massage
just
it.
take it. massaging and
Right,
use
right.
all
Perfect. Well, that's nice.
that.
Look, that's interesting to know. I'm always curious to see how people are using AI, and I'm with you. I feel AI is very much in its infancy in terms of real complex applications. If you want to write a resume or story, or get a bit of line of code or whatever, I think we're scratching the surface. I think we're at that point right now, and I'm sure you've read in the news how a lot of the larger tech companies have had some flubs with AI, and I think and I don't think those were based on anything too complex in terms of what they were trying to do. So I can just imagine that we're still a few iterations away from being able to really apply it to something like manufacturing.
The one use
Or
case in a lot of the companies I work with that I think will probably be the first one where it gets used is predictive maintenance, where you can essentially,
okay,
because the companies often selling the equipment are selling to enough companies. A medium-sized company by itself doesn't have enough data, but a lot
no,
of their vendors,
the
if they
vendors, yeah,
spoke with all their clients, can start to create some pretty interesting algorithms looking at, when is something likely to break down based on certain symptoms they can see and so on. So I think that would probably be one of the first ones that
no,
really
that's
show up.
interesting. The vehicle manufacturers are saying, hey, you need to get your oil changed, every so often. Paint every car with the same brush or whatever. I think, like you said, the more data that you get, the more you'll be able to come up with something more accurate in terms of, let's maintain this part so that we're really on top of it 6 months before it breaks down, or the expected decay or decline or wear or whatever. I'm with you. Yeah, for your clients, it sounds like that would be a good place to start for them. For sure, I expect, you have any kind of manufacturing, maintenance is a huge component, for sure.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would look to get into in terms of a service that you offer, some sort of maintenance, preventative software?
I would certainly, not something I would do by myself, but it's something I can look to incorporate into, I think the value of it really is understanding how to and where to find those solutions for a
Okay.
company, and then how to actually tie them into all of their existing equipment that may or may not have easy ways of doing that. A lot of it may not out of the box at the simplest ways.
Nice.
Got the data you
Nice.
need.
We're in the Ottawa area. Do you find there is a lot of, or there's enough manufacturing here, or you're going to have to find clients that are, open up your geographic region?
I've sort of drawn a roughly 200-kilometer circle around Ottawa,
Okay.
partly for that reason. Ottawa has a surprising amount of manufacturing, but
Yeah,
the bigger clumps that are down in the Seaway along the 401, sort of
yeah, for sure.
that, and then as well, you get some interesting stuff up in the Ottawa Valley, forestry related and so on up
Sure.
there. So that's sort of, well, I'm certainly, Ottawa is great. Those are the areas I think have some of the bigger opportunities are in there,
Yeah.
right in Ottawa itself.
Look, I haven't done the research, but I think you're onto something. Would you ever take a contract that would take you further out? Like if you had to go, like, say, Vancouver or something like that, or is that too far? You're like, no, I'm going to stay local.
No, I've got no, as long as it is financially worthwhile, I certainly
Right?
would have no problem taking wider, a wider view. You do get into one of the things I haven't looked at yet is as you get into other provinces, you've got other taxes and so on to
Yes.
worry about. So that's one thing in the back of my mind. If I do go outside of Ontario, I have to start figuring some of that out as well too, which would just be another piece. But
Another one of those hats you have to wear, right? Thinking about the
exactly.
taxes, and you can't just go out and do work. You have to think of all the ramifications and all the fun stuff that's involved there. At least you know the guy that's going to approve your expenses. That's good, right?
That's right. He's easy.
So that's the good news. If you had to travel, it sounds like based on your family life that it's allowing you to be more flexible. You don't have to be, home for take care of the kids necessarily, because they're all self-sufficient and kind of doing their own thing.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, in fact, I would enjoy the travel, but I will see if what happens with the probably larger companies, but you never know what can happen. So.
All right. All right. Where would you go from here? What's the next step in your journey? I understand that the road, the journey isn't always a straight line, but what do you envision?
I guess, ultimately my goal is a business that at some point I can pick and choose the work I'm taking on. Um, you know, I can't imagine retiring and just playing golf, so I intend to keep working, but I don't want to be doing that. Is probably now I'll probably taper off how much. But
Yeah,
ultimately
for
my
sure.
goal is just to get to that would be to get to that point where I'm sure I've got some interesting work that I can pick and choose and do what I
Nice.
enjoy. What the path looks like to there, yeah, that's an hard.
It's tough, right?
It's
Tough
just,
to say. Yeah.
yeah, it could be there could be a fairly wide variety of different kinds of work within this sphere that I'm not sure what I'm going to find is the most um, most financially beneficial, essentially, right? To take on. That's
Yeah.
what I'm still exploring.
Yeah, and that's tough. Like now, okay, here's a question for you. Have you found it difficult to price your services?
Yes.
Yes. Right, because it's a
Yeah.
challenge, right? I mean, you come with all these years of experience, but at the same time, you're like, look, I got to get a client. How do I entice? I can't charge $1 million an hour right off. Can't scare them away. So, and look, that's not just you. That's everyone. Everyone who's starting a business has a hard time valuing their services,
Yeah. No, I think that is probably amongst a few other things, it's probably one of the biggest questions I still have is how to do that
right?
effectively. I'm a, I knew going in that I didn't want to work hourly, that I want to work
Okay,
on a project basis.
nice. Good.
So that leads to you having to understand how much work you're going to put in, as well as you're basing it on the value it is to the company. And both of those are, at this point, often still big questions for me. So that's
Of
that
course, right?
challenge there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
I would.
not so much competition. In this space, I don't think there's so much pricing against other people. You're more pricing against yourself in terms of the value you can bring to a company.
Right now, is that even worse because you don't have a frame of reference if there's no competition? You can't Google how much should I charge for this kind of
Yeah.
consulting, right?
Yeah, I think it does. It makes it quite challenging because you can't, it's very hard to find out what someone else would charge. So it really is
Right.
trying to understand what a company thinks you'd be worth. And then figuring out how to, do it with an amount of time that makes that worthwhile. So I find that still a very challenging process to figure.
I'll bet. And for sure, anytime I've spoken to any business owners, certainly when they're first starting out is really, and the worst thing, it's not the worst thing, but I guess the thing that happens more commonly is that you undervalue your services just so you can get those first couple clients. And then I've spoken to a few people and they've always walked away from some kind of negotiation like, oh, I could have charged so much more, right?
Yeah.
And so they always undercut them. I mean, but it's a learning curve. You do want to get that client. You do want to figure out what works and what doesn't. Always talking to people, and we always talk it out about how it's okay that you went a little lower in the first time around, just because it's going to be a little rough in terms of the whole process anyway. So that's okay, and to charge more next time.
That's it. I don't think you can beat yourself up over it. You just sort of,
No,
yeah, you say, what did I learn out of this one? And you think
that's
that's
right.
the client.
That's right. Okay, now let's talk about this. Speaking of learning, so your first couple clients, did you find it tricky to learn your own processes and your own procedures and how you're going to do things?
Yeah, I think that's certainly been a challenge. I have the consulting background, so I
Yeah.
sort of understood, and maybe I thought I understood more what this was going to look like going in. I've discovered figuring out my own processes and specifically how to sort of tie into companies and sort of have your processes integrated in with what the communication to them and what they're trying to get out of what you're doing and so on has been that's been certainly a big learning out of this. So I'm still in the process, but
So I think that's the thing, right? No matter how much experience you have in real world, corporate, whatever, but doing it on your own and coming up with your own systems and processes and routines and that's it. You there's no silver bullet for that. You really got to figure it out through trial and error.
Very much so. Yeah, I think that's half the fun of starting your
Yeah.
own business is that learning process. You just can't get too down if it goes wrong, or keep going.
As long as you're happy with that, because really, that's part of the battle, right? You got to price out your services properly. You got to learn sales and marketing. You got to figure out your own systems, and then you got to do some accounting in there somewhere, right? That's
Yeah,
all. A lot of hats for sure. Bringing all the experience that you have to the table, have you had to learn to really learn anything new from scratch? Like, I will say software, any kind of processes to that
yeah.
effect?
I mean, I think some of the basics of running a business, and I've been looking at this for a while. I thought I figured it out, but as you say, just the basics of how do I do my accounting? How do I get a bank account? How do I write a contract? Were all new, and I'm still learning, and some of it's still ongoing. So that those basic business processes
Yeah.
were definitely something I had to learn. It was incredibly hard to figure out how to do business banking, and never done it before. But
Yeah, right. And you need to learn how there's a lot of fees. As soon as
yeah.
you say I'm doing business, whatever. I have a business cell phone. I have a business bank account. Oh, the fees are higher. Oh, that's fine.
But I've also, even from a technology point of view, I took on the second contract I took on was very much I know I didn't figure this out, but
Right.
I'm not sure exactly know how to do it, and so I learned a lot of technology related sort of pieces as it on that one. So it's
And I
been
think that's the big thing. I had a conversation with someone not too long ago, and really knowing that you can figure something out, knowing that you can do it, having that kind of self confidence is big. Because you're never going to find a client if you're like, oh, I couldn't work with that guy because I couldn't figure it out, or I couldn't work with them because there's no way I can do it. Like, you have to know that whoever you're working with or whoever you're approaching, you can do it. In terms of, like you said, I can figure it out. You don't
yeah.
know it today, but you can figure it out. And that's, I think that's big.
I think that's part of uh, the consulting. I don't know. It's not really maybe consulting, but maybe solo business perspective is you have to be able to present that view of yes, I can do this, and
Yeah.
in the back of your mind, no, well, I know I can,
Yeah.
just not quite sure how, which is kind of
Yeah,
fun.
I'll figure it out. You just say yes, and you figure out how to do it later, right? That's the key. I mean, look, obviously you don't want to sell services that you couldn't figure out. I think we understand that it's things that you already know. You can figure out how to do it based on the situation.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't want to say, yeah, I wouldn't want to imply that you're going in knowing nothing, that there's always
Right?
those
I
up.
don't want you don't want to tell. Yeah, sure, no problem. I could ride a unicycle, no problem. I've never done it. I don't know anything about it. I've never even watched a video. Couldn't tell you. So those kind of things may be different, but in terms of, if you're basing it on your experience and things you've done before, that's probably more reasonable in terms of
Yes.
expectations and reality. We've got a nice, pretty website that I was looking at, so that's really nice. Did you do that yourself? Did
No,
you?
I had one of the few things I paid for up front was to have someone do a website for me. I know I have
Nice.
zero artistic talent, visual artistic talent, so I decided to have someone pull that together, as well as there was just so much to learn and do that I thought having someone
Right?
with experience to take that on.
And that's another thing, I guess. You got to know your limitations and know when to contract it out, and
Yeah,
pay someone who has the experience and know-how and knowledge to do that stuff. There you go. There's the other lesson.
yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. I love that you have so much experience. I love that you have a plan going forward. I love that you got clients fairly easily. I mean, I know obviously I don't want to dumb it down and make it sound like it's easy, because certainly I never think that. Starting your own business and lying awake at night thinking about your business and hoping that everything will work out, I know that's challenging, and that's can cause some anxiety for sure. But I love to hear that things are going well, and that you took a leap, and it's going in the right direction. So I think that's great. I love
No,
it.
for sure. You kind of waffle between terrified and the enjoyment of doing it. So I think you go back
Right?
and forth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Part of
And
it.
are you at a point yet where you can enjoy it enough and kind of embrace the work? And like you said, you want to find those clients and the work that you want to do. Are you kind of approaching that point?
I love the work I'm doing. I think I still get terrified that the next slide's not going to show up. So I'm still sort of in that position, but
That's always, yeah, that's tough, eh? It's always a fear. And that's always fair. And that's the difference between, being an employee and a business owner, right? And when you're an employee, the work comes, the work doesn't, you still get a paycheck, you hope, I mean, obviously you don't want to get laid off, of course, but it's up to someone else to get that work for you, right? And you're not, you got a sales team that's doing that. You got other marketing engine that's working on behalf of your company. So less that you have to worry about as an employee. You don't sit up at night thinking about that stuff. That's something that is reserved for the business owners, those brave few souls that want to take the plunge and do it. I love that you're doing it. I love that that it's working out, and that's fantastic. So what, any other lessons that you've learned along the way that you think other people should know about? Learn from mistakes maybe, or maybe you avoided some big mistakes?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have any great insight. I think the biggest thing has just been to stay sort of grounded as you go through those emotions of, oh, this is awesome, but man, I'm terrified and what to do more kind of thing. But I think that's probably been the biggest thing I've learned to sort out. It's just to sort of, and take time once in a while just to totally forget the business, even though you feel like you've got a million things to do. Go
Is that
do
tough
that.
to do? Is that tough to do, to shut that off?
It's tough to mentally shut it off, for
Yeah.
sure. And partly because I enjoy what I'm doing.
Oh, well, that's good, I guess. If you're going to have something on your mind, you might as well be something that you enjoy. That's awesome.
Sure. But yeah, it is. And I think it's necessary to step away from that.
You're right. Yeah. Well, good work-life balance. That it's always important for sure. You do have a family, right? So you want to make sure that they're not being neglected, because I've heard that a happy wife and a happy life go hand in hand. So I try to balance that myself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Caleb, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. And I can't wait to see what you're doing next in the future. I can't wait to hear how you got some new clients, and I feel like it's all going to work out for you. You really got a good momentum going.
Thanks very much. I enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Thanks very much, Caleb. We'll talk to you soon.